I never imagined a single swipe of eyeliner could completely change the course of my life, but here I am, telling you this story, because I know so many of you might be struggling with parts of yourselves you've hidden, ignored, or been too afraid to explore. It all started on a day that, at first, seemed completely ordinary. I woke up like any other Saturday, sun filtering through my blinds, the smell of coffee in the kitchen downstairs, my parents humming in the background. I was 17, trying to blend in, trying to feel normal in a world that never really made me feel normal at all. My friends thought I was quiet, maybe a little awkward, and I never argued. I was the kind of person who avoided attention, the kind of person who laughed at jokes I didn't really get just to fit in, the kind of person who existed without ever really living. But there was a part of me that no one knew about. A part of me that stared in the mirror for hours, trying to imagine what it would feel like to be someone else, someone freer, someone lighter. I loved the way girls moved, the confidence in the way they walked, the way their laughter seemed to fill a room. I admired it secretly, with the kind of obsession that makes your chest tighten and your palms sweat. I had a box hidden under my bed filled with things I wasn't supposed to have: nail polish, hair clips, a few old dresses from when my cousin would leave them behind, and a tiny little tube of black eyeliner. I had never used it before. It scared me, honestly, because it wasn't just makeup, it was a key to something I didn't fully understand yet, something I had spent years denying. That Saturday, for some reason I can't explain, I felt different. The air felt heavier, like it was full of possibility. I sat on my bed, holding that small pencil in my shaking hand, staring at it like it was a weapon and a lifeline at the same time. I wasn't planning on going out. I wasn't planning on anyone seeing me. I just wanted to try. One careful swipe along my upper eyelid, close to the lashes. I closed my eyes, holding my breath, and when I opened them, I didn't recognize myself. Or maybe I did. I recognized a part of me I had been hiding all this time. The reflection staring back at me wasn't fake. It wasn't a costume. It was me, finally letting myself exist in a way I had only dared dream about. And that was the start of everything. That one line, simple and black, became a door. I experimented cautiously at first, adding a touch more eyeliner, brushing some mascara onto my lashes, and then blending in some eyeshadow I had borrowed from my sister when she wasn't looking. Every little swipe, every tiny adjustment, was like a whisper telling me, "You're allowed to be seen." I started to see my face differently, not as something to hide, not as something wrong, but as something beautiful in its own right. I spent the entire day in front of the mirror, experimenting, learning, discovering curves of my expression I never knew existed. The fear was still there, sharp and biting. What if someone found out? What if they laughed? What if my parents never forgave me for exploring this side of myself? But the more I hesitated, the more I realized that staying hidden had already cost me so much. I wanted more than hiding. I wanted to breathe. I wanted to live. By evening, I decided to take a small step. I put on a hoodie that hid my frame and went for a walk. I carried myself differently, with an awareness I had never experienced. I didn't know if anyone noticed me, or if anyone cared, and honestly, I didn't care either. It felt like freedom, and I wanted more. The next days became a pattern. I would wait until my parents were distracted or gone and then practice in my room. Eyeliner, mascara, sometimes subtle blush, and eventually, I started experimenting with hair clips, scarves, even skirts and tops that made me feel right. I was terrified, but I was alive in a way I had never been before. Then came the day that truly changed everything. My best friend, Emma, came over unexpectedly. I froze when I saw her standing there in my doorway, because I had just finished trying on a skirt with a light blouse and, of course, the eyeliner. I hadn't planned on anyone seeing me, ever. My heart pounded in my chest, my throat dry. I thought she'd laugh, tell everyone, maybe even stop being my friend. I couldn't move. But she didn't. She didn't flinch, didn't look away, didn't say a word for a moment. And then she smiled, the kind of smile that makes you feel like you're not completely alone in the world. She said, "You look amazing." Just that, simple, and everything in me shifted. I had been carrying shame for so long, thinking I had to hide who I was. But in that smile, I felt acceptance for the first time, from someone who mattered. It gave me courage. From that day, things moved fast. I began experimenting more openly, learning everything I could about makeup, fashion, hair, and expression. I watched tutorials online, followed people who were unapologetically themselves, and slowly, my confidence grew. I started taking small steps outside my room. A walk to the store with a light touch of eyeliner and mascara. A visit to the park in something that felt more like me than any hoodie I had ever owned. Each step was terrifying, but each step was proof that I could exist in the world as I truly wanted to. And then came the biggest leap, school. I had always been afraid of ridicule, of gossip, of being ostracized. But one day, I decided I had waited long enough. I carefully applied eyeliner, a touch of blush, a small dab of lipstick borrowed from my sister, and wore an outfit I had chosen with deliberate care. The moment I stepped into the hallway, I felt like my heart would burst. Every eye in the room seemed to flicker toward me. Some were curious, some surprised, some amused, but I realized something incredible: I didn't care. I walked like I owned the space, and for the first time, the space felt like it belonged to me. The reactions weren't always positive, of course. Some whispered behind my back, some snickered, but I also found allies. People who saw me and smiled, people who complimented me sincerely, people who encouraged me. I began to understand that bravery isn't about being unafraid, it's about moving forward even when your heart is pounding in terror. It's about choosing authenticity over comfort. And with each passing day, the line between who I was hiding from the world and who I really was grew smaller. The reflection in the mirror no longer scared me, it thrilled me. Family was harder. Telling my parents felt impossible. I feared disappointment, rejection, shame. But one night, after months of hiding, I decided honesty was worth the risk. I invited my mom into my room, my hands trembling as I pointed to my makeup, my outfits, my reflection in the mirror. I held my breath, expecting anger, tears, maybe even a door slammed in my face. But she surprised me. She sat down beside me, took my hand, and said, "I don't fully understand this yet, but I love you. I want you to be happy." I cried, not just for the relief, but for the years of fear and shame I had carried alone. That night, I realized that acceptance begins at home, and courage begins with telling the truth, even when it terrifies you. The transformation wasn't just external. Every swipe of eyeliner, every choice of clothing, every step outside my comfort zone reshaped me from the inside out. I discovered resilience I never knew I had. I learned to navigate fear and uncertainty with patience and grace. I developed empathy for others struggling with their own hidden selves. I realized that identity is fluid, personal, and deeply human, and that embracing it fully can open doors you never imagined. Looking back now, I can pinpoint the exact moment my life changed. Not a birthday, not a graduation, not a major milestone, just one simple, deliberate swipe of eyeliner along my eyelid. One small act of courage that ignited a chain reaction, pulling me from the shadows of self-doubt into the sunlight of authenticity. It changed the way I saw myself, the way I moved through the world, and ultimately, the way the world saw me. Even now, years later, I carry that memory with me. It reminds me that transformation doesn't need to be dramatic or public at first. It begins quietly, in small gestures, in private moments of bravery. It begins with the decision to acknowledge the truth of who you are, to give yourself permission to exist fully, unapologetically. It begins with courage, and courage, I've learned, can arrive in the most unexpected forms, like a pencil of black eyeliner resting in your hand on a quiet Saturday morning. I'm not finished with my story. I don't think anyone ever really is. Life continues to test you, challenge you, and surprise you. But every time I pick up that eyeliner, or try a new outfit, or step into a room fully seen as myself, I remember that one swipe that changed my destiny forever. I remember the fear, the thrill, the trembling anticipation, and the overwhelming joy of realizing that who I am is enough, that who I am is valid, and that courage doesn't have to roar, it can whisper, quietly, in the moments you least expect it. And so, here I am, still learning, still exploring, still daring to live openly, with the memory of that first swipe guiding me, reminding me, inspiring me. One eyeliner swipe didn't just change the way I looked. It changed the way I felt, the way I moved, the the way I loved myself, and ultimately, the way I allowed the world to see me. It was a small act with a monumental impact, a simple gesture that became the first page of a life rewritten. And I know, without a doubt, that every moment of fear and doubt was worth it, because that single line of black across my eyelid unlocked a version of me that I will never hide again, a version of me that has become, irrevocably, who I am meant to be. After that night with my mom, I thought everything would fall neatly into place. I was wrong. Acceptance isn't a straight line, it's a maze, full of dead ends, confusion, and moments where you question whether you've made a mistake. For a few days, things at home were quiet. My dad didn't say much, but I could feel his silence hanging in the air like fog. Every dinner felt heavier, every glance sharper. I tried to act normal, to talk about school, to keep the peace, but there was a distance between us now, a space filled with unspoken words and unasked questions. One evening, when the tension became unbearable, he finally spoke. He didn't yell. He didn't scold. He just looked at me and said, "I don't understand this." Not yet. That was it. But in that single sentence, I heard both love and confusion, fear and concern. I realized then that transformation doesn't just change you, it changes everyone around you. People have to unlearn their assumptions, rebuild their image of who you are, and that takes time. I had to remind myself of that every day. At school, things were even more complicated. Some people avoided me altogether, like my existence made them uncomfortable. Others whispered, laughed, or stared too long in the hallways. But there were also unexpected surprises, people I never thought would care suddenly showing kindness, like the art teacher who asked if I'd like to help design stage makeup for the upcoming school play. It felt like an invitation, not just to be creative, but to belong somewhere. I said yes instantly, though I was terrified inside. That play became a turning point. For weeks, I worked backstage, applying makeup on actors, learning the art of transformation on others while still trying to understand it within myself. I was good at it, better than I expected. Maybe because when I painted eyeliner or shaped someone's look, I wasn't just enhancing faces, I was helping people see themselves differently, even if only for a few hours under bright lights. And every time someone thanked me, every time someone smiled at their reflection, I felt a quiet strength growing inside me. It was the first time I felt proud of who I was becoming. One day, during rehearsals, the lead actress didn't show up. The director, in a panic, asked if anyone could fill in temporarily just for blocking practice. Before I could even think, Emma raised her hand and said, "They can do it." I froze. The entire cast turned toward me. My instinct was to shake my head, to retreat into the safety of invisibility, but Emma gave me that same reassuring look she had the first day she saw me in eyeliner. I took a breath and stepped forward. When I walked onto that stage, even just pretending for practice, something shifted again. The lights were hot, the floorboards creaked under my shoes, and all eyes were on me, but instead of shrinking, I felt like I was expanding, filling every inch of the space with my presence. It wasn't about pretending anymore. It was about expressing. For the first time, the world saw not the awkward kid hiding behind a hoodie, but someone confident, graceful, and real. After that day, I couldn't go back. I started helping more with makeup, fashion choices, even dialogue delivery. People began treating me differently, not as a joke or an oddity, but as someone talented and reliable. Confidence has a way of changing how others see you, even if they don't understand you completely. Of course, not everyone was supportive. There was one classmate, Jason, who made it his mission to remind me I was different. His words stung at first, sharp and cruel, but I refused to let him break me. I learned to meet his comments with calm, sometimes even a small smile. I realized bullies feed on reaction, and when you stop giving them the power to define you, they lose their control. Still, every night after school, when the noise quieted, his words echoed in my mind. It wasn't easy. I'd look in the mirror, tracing that same eyeliner line, reminding myself that I was stronger than fear, stronger than mockery, stronger than the old version of me who used to hide. Then something happened I'll never forget. The night of the play arrived. The auditorium was packed, the air buzzing with excitement. I wasn't performing on stage, but I had spent hours doing makeup, styling, and making sure every actor looked perfect. As the Curtain rose, I stood quietly in the wings, my heart pounding, proud of what I had helped create. Halfway through the show, though, one of the actresses suddenly fell ill backstage. The director looked at me in panic again and said, "You know her lines, right?" I did. I had memorized them by accident while helping with makeup. Before I could argue, they handed me the costume. I'll never forget that moment. Standing there, in full costume, with my heart racing, the eyeliner sharp against my eyes, I felt like time stopped. When I stepped into the spotlight, I was no longer pretending. I was alive. Every word I spoke echoed through the auditorium like it belonged there. The audience leaned in, silent, watching me. And when the scene ended, the applause that followed wasn't just for the character, it was for me. For the courage it took to stand there, visible, vulnerable, unapologetically myself. After the show, people I barely knew came up to me with tears in their eyes, saying how moving it was, how real it felt. I didn't tell them that for me, it wasn't acting. It was confession. That night, I walked home under the stars, my costume still in my bag, my heart full of something I couldn't name yet, peace, maybe, or pride. Things at home softened after that. My dad came to the play. I saw him in the audience, sitting stiffly at first, but by the end, I saw something shift in his expression, something like understanding. When we got home, he didn't say much, just patted my shoulder and said, "You were brave up there." It wasn't a full acceptance, but it was a beginning, and sometimes beginnings are enough. The weeks that followed felt lighter. I started helping more people with makeup, even posting a few tutorials online under a pseudonym. I didn't show my full face at first, just my hands, my eyes, my work, but the comments started coming in. People said things like, "Your voice is so calming, and you make me feel seen." Those words hit deep. I wasn't just transforming myself anymore, I was helping others find the courage to do the same. Emma became my biggest supporter, always reminding me that I wasn't defined by others' comfort. We spent countless nights talking about identity, about fear, about how it feels to live on the edge of who you're expected to be. Sometimes we'd laugh until tears rolled down our faces, and other times, we'd sit in silence, knowing that some emotions didn't need words. She helped me see that authenticity isn't something you owe the world, it's something you owe yourself. One day, I decided to take a bigger step. I went to the local mall, fully dressed as myself, no hiding, no hoodie, no excuses. I remember walking past the glass doors, my reflection catching the light, my eyeliner sharp, my outfit chosen carefully, and feeling both terrified and unstoppable. People looked, some smiled, some didn't, but it didn't matter. I wasn't walking for them. I was walking for me. I stopped by a makeup store, chatting with one of the staff who complimented my eyeliner and asked where I learned it. I smiled and said, "One day I just tried, and I never stopped." She laughed and said, "That's how all great stories start." And maybe she was right. But life isn't a fairy tale. There were still moments of doubt, days I woke up feeling like I couldn't do it, like the world was too heavy, too judgmental. On those days, I'd sit in front of the mirror, holding that same black eyeliner pencil, tracing it slowly along my eyes, grounding myself in that simple ritual. It reminded me that change doesn't happen overnight, it happens every time you choose courage over fear, authenticity over conformity. Now, looking back, I can trace every major moment of my transformation to that first act of courage. That single swipe of eyeliner wasn't just makeup, it was a statement. A declaration that I was ready to stop hiding. It taught me that destiny isn't written in stars or books, sometimes it's written in the small choices we make in the privacy of our rooms when no one's watching. And so, if you're listening to this, if you've ever looked in the mirror and wondered who you really are, I want you to know something: it's okay to be scared. It's okay to take small steps. It's okay if your first attempt isn't perfect. What matters is that you try, that you allow yourself to see who you could become. Because sometimes, all it takes is one moment of bravery, one small act of self-love, one swipe of eyeliner to change everything. Time has a strange way of moving when you start living honestly. Days blend into weeks, and before you realize it, the world begins to shift around you, reacting to the person you're becoming. After that day at the mall, when I walked past my reflection and didn't flinch, something inside me clicked into place. I started living more freely, still cautious, but less apologetic. I wasn't trying to be anyone else anymore. I was trying to be the version of myself that had been waiting patiently beneath layers of fear and expectation. School felt different. It wasn't easier, but it was more bearable. The whispers still came sometimes, but they didn't sting the same way. I think people started to sense that I wasn't ashamed anymore, and shame, I realized, is what feeds cruelty. When you stop feeding it, it starves. Some of the same classmates who once mocked me now just let me be. A few even asked me questions, quietly, privately, like they were curious but afraid to admit it. I answered when I could, not as a teacher, but as someone who understood what it meant to feel lost. I remember one conversation in particular. A girl named Lily, who sat 2 rows behind me in English, pulled me aside after class. Her voice trembled when she said, "You're really brave." I didn't know what to say at first. I wasn't trying to be brave, I was just trying to breathe. She told me that seeing me be myself made her want to stop pretending too. That she had dreams and interests she'd been too afraid to pursue because she thought people would laugh. I didn't know how to comfort her, so I just said, "Start small. Sometimes one small thing changes everything." She smiled, and I realized my journey wasn't just mine anymore. It was quietly touching others, the way Emma had once touched mine. Outside of school, I started getting more confident online too. The makeup videos I posted anonymously started gaining traction. People from different countries commented, sharing their stories, their struggles, their victories. Reading their words late at night felt like being part of something bigger than myself, like there was a whole world of people quietly learning how to exist, just like I had. Some nights I'd stay up late, replying to messages, offering encouragement, not realizing how much it was healing me too. Then, one morning, something unexpected happened. I woke up to hundreds of new notifications. One of my videos had gone viral. I didn't even show my full face in it, just a close-up of my eyes as I applied eyeliner slowly, the caption reading, "One line changed everything." Maybe it was the simplicity, maybe it was the emotion in my voice, but it resonated. People wrote paragraphs about how it inspired them to finally try, to finally look in the mirror without fear. Reading those comments made me cry, not out of sadness, but gratitude. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was seen, understood, even celebrated. But with visibility came pressure. Suddenly, people wanted to know who I was, what I looked like, what my name was. I wasn't ready for that. I had built a small world where I could exist safely, and now that world was expanding faster than I could control. I confided in Emma, telling her I was scared of what might happen if people from school or my family found out it was me behind the videos. She listened quietly, then said something that stuck with me forever. "Maybe the world is finally ready to see the person you've been hiding. And maybe you're ready too." Her words echoed in my mind for days. I kept replaying them, imagining what it would mean to be fully open, to not just be someone online, or someone in secret, but someone real, whole, visible. One evening, I made my decision. I set up my camera, took a deep breath, and hit record. This time, I didn't hide my face. I introduced myself by name, voice shaking, heart racing. I told my story honestly, the confusion, the fear, the first time I picked up that eyeliner pencil and how it changed my destiny. I didn't edit out the tremors in my voice or the tears that came halfway through. I wanted it to be real. When I uploaded it, I almost deleted it 10 times before pressing post. The next morning, I woke up to silence at first, and then the flood began. Messages from strangers, from classmates, even from teachers. Some said they cried watching it. Some said they saw themselves in my words. And some said they were proud of me. Of course, not everyone understood, but for every cruel message, there were 10 that radiated warmth. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. Then my dad knocked on my door. My stomach dropped. I knew he must have seen it. I braced myself for disappointment, maybe even anger. But when I opened the door, he just stood there, quiet, holding his phone in his hand. His eyes were red, not from anger, but from something softer. He said, "I watched your video." I couldn't speak. He took a deep breath and continued, "I didn't realize how much you were holding inside. You're stronger than I thought." That moment broke me. I started crying, not out of fear, but because I had been waiting for years to hear something like that. We didn't hug right away, we just stood there, two people learning to understand each other after years of silence. Eventually, he reached out, awkward but sincere, and pulled me into an embrace. I will never forget how it felt, the weight of all those years of hiding melting away. After that, things changed slowly but beautifully. My mom began helping me pick outfits. My dad asked questions, awkward but genuine. Emma and I started volunteering at a local community center where we met people who had gone through journeys similar to mine. I realized how many people were living quietly, waiting for permission to exist. It made me want to keep telling my story, not for fame, not for attention, but because if my words could make even one person feel less alone, then it was worth it. But life wasn't all smooth after that. Fame, even small internet fame, brought scrutiny. Some people twisted my story, others mocked me online. There were nights I couldn't sleep, scrolling through cruel comments, wondering if I had made a mistake. I'd stare at the ceiling, the glow of my phone lighting up the dark, asking myself if I was strong enough to keep going. But then I'd remember that first moment, the trembling hand, the eyeliner pencil, the reflection that had looked back at me with hope. I would wipe my tears, sit at my desk, and write something honest again. That became my ritual, my healing. Months passed, and one day I was invited to speak at a small event about identity and self-expression. Standing on that stage, looking at faces in the audience who were eager to listen, I felt that same rush I'd felt under the theater lights back in school. I told them my story, not the polished version, but the real one, with all the fear, the pain, and the small victories. When I finished, the applause wasn't loud or wild, it was warm, gentle, human. People lined up afterward to talk to me, some in tears, some smiling, some just saying thank you. That night, walking home under the same stars that had watched me years ago, I realized destiny isn't something written for us, it's something we create every time we choose truth over fear. I thought about that younger version of me, sitting on the edge of the bed, terrified to draw a simple line across my eyelid. If I could talk to that person now, I'd say, you did it. You found yourself. Now, every morning when I stand in front of the mirror, the routine feels sacred. I pick up that eyeliner, the same brand I started with, and I draw that thin, familiar line. It's more than makeup. It's a reminder. A reminder of courage, of change, of the day I stopped hiding and started living. Sometimes I still get scared old habits don't vanish overnight. There are days I doubt myself, days I feel fragile. But when that happens, I remember how far I've come. I remember the people I've met, the messages I've received, the faces that smiled because my story gave them hope. That's what keeps me going. So here I am, years later, still holding that eyeliner in my hand, still feeling that spark of magic every time I use it. Because one eyeliner swipe didn't just change my appearance, it changed the way I see the world, the way I love, the way I exist. It became a symbol of everything I once feared and everything I've now embraced. And if you're listening to this, wondering if a small act could ever really change your life, I want you to know it can. It might not be eyeliner for you. Maybe it's a song, a painting, a confession, a single word you've been too afraid to say. But when you take that step, however small, you start writing your own destiny. That's what I learned. That's what I live by now. Because sometimes, all it takes is one brave moment to turn the rest of your life into a story worth telling. And then came the day that felt like the world stopped spinning for a moment. It was supposed to be just another rehearsal, just another practice before the competition finals, but something about that evening had a different air. I had spent the last few weeks perfecting not just the routine but also the person I had become in the mirror. Every eyeliner stroke, every lip touch, every bit of fabric had become a part of me. I didn't feel like I was acting anymore. I didn't even flinch when someone called me by the name Leah. It was the name they started using for me at the studio, as a joke at first, but now it didn't feel like one. It felt natural, almost like the name had been waiting for me my whole life, hiding behind all the layers of fear I had built. When I arrived that day, Mia ran up to me, her eyes glowing with excitement, saying that a local talent scout was coming to see the final performance. My heart pounded. It wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about what came after. As we started rehearsing, I could feel every emotion boiling beneath my skin: fear, joy, confusion, and something new I hadn't yet named. When the music played, I moved without thinking. My arms floated, my expression shifted, and I saw my reflection in the studio mirror as something beyond what I had imagined. The eyeliner caught the light like a signature, like destiny itself shining from my face. When we finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then came the applause. The scout came forward and shook my hand. He looked at me with this curious gaze and said, "You have something special, something people will remember." I smiled, not knowing what to say, and Mia squeezed my hand. I thought that moment was the climax, that the story would end with me realizing my worth. But it wasn't that simple. That night, as I walked home with my duffel bag over my shoulder and the makeup still soft on my face, I saw my reflection in a shop window. For the first time, I didn't recognize the boy I had been. I recognized her, the girl in the glass, standing tall, calm, and confident. And yet, when I got home and looked into the real mirror, I hesitated. I wiped off the eyeliner, just as I had so many nights before. But this time, when I looked at my bare reflection, it didn't feel right. It felt like I was erasing something alive. Days went by, and I tried to act normal. At work, I laughed at jokes, typed reports, avoided the mirror in the bathroom. But my co-workers started to notice I was distant. Even Mr. Patel asked if I was okay. And that's when it happened. During a lunch break, one of my colleagues, a woman named Sana, pulled me aside. She said she had seen photos from the show online. "You looked beautiful," she whispered. I froze. I thought I'd kept everything private, but apparently, someone had tagged me. I felt my stomach twist with panic, expecting ridicule, gossip, maybe even the end of my job. But she just smiled. "You looked free," she said softly, "and you shouldn't hide that." It was such a small sentence, but it echoed in me louder than thunder. That night, I went home, locked my door, and opened the drawer where I had hidden the eyeliner, foundation, and lipstick. I stared at them like they were keys to a life I hadn't yet lived. I drew one clean line of eyeliner again, slow and steady, watching how my eyes changed in the mirror. It wasn't about pretending anymore. It wasn't even about courage. It was about truth. For the next few weeks, I started living in two worlds. By day, I was the quiet office worker no one noticed much. By evening, I was Leah, expressive, alive, unafraid to move or smile. It was exhausting and exhilarating all at once, balancing between two identities that felt like one person split by time. I started journaling everything: the looks, the feelings, the stares on the street, the compliments that cut deeper than criticism ever could. Sometimes, I wondered what my parents would say if they knew. Sometimes, I almost told them. But every time I stood before them, the words got trapped in my throat. Then came the real turning point. The day of the regional showcase arrived, and I had been chosen to represent the studio. The same scout was attending, along with more from agencies. I felt the weight of expectation, but also a quiet resolve. This was my story to tell, through movement, expression, through the person I had become. That evening, I put on the costume that Mia helped me choose: elegant, simple, yet powerful. When I applied the eyeliner this time, my hands didn't tremble. It was the same motion as before, but now it carried all the meaning in the world. When I stepped onto that stage, the lights blinded me for a second. Then, as the music began, something inside me unfolded. Every movement became a confession, every glance a revelation. The audience wasn't just watching, they were feeling. And when it ended, I stood there, breathless, trembling, but not from fear, from liberation. The applause didn't matter. What mattered was that for the first time, I had performed not as someone pretending to be something else, but as who I really was. Afterward, the scout approached me again. He handed me a card, told me they wanted to feature me in a campaign about self-expression. I could hardly believe it. Me, the one who once hid a wig in a box, afraid of being seen. When I left that night, I didn't take off the eyeliner. I walked through the city streets, lights reflecting in my eyes, feeling like the world was different, or maybe I was. Days turned into weeks, and everything changed faster than I expected. The campaign went viral. People sent messages from everywhere, some kind, some cruel. But the kindness drowned out the noise. I even received a message from my old friend Arif. It just said, "I saw you. I'm proud of you." I cried that night. Not out of sadness, but because I realized how long I had waited to be seen, truly seen. When I look back now, it all began with that one swipe of eyeliner, a moment so small it could have been forgotten. But it wasn't. It became the line that divided the person I was from the person I was meant to be. My story isn't about becoming someone new. It's about finally becoming myself. Sometimes I still catch people staring, sometimes I still hear whispers, but they don't break me anymore. Because every time I face the mirror, I see her, the girl who was always waiting for me behind the reflection. And every time I pick up that eyeliner, I remember, destiny isn't written in stars. Sometimes, it's drawn right across your eyes.